Informant met with multiple advisors on President Trump's campaign team.
This investigation, Judge, has been going on almost 2 years. No collusion, no evidence of any wrongdoing.
The tragic school shooting in Santa Fe, Texas, reigniting the gun debate on Capitol Hill.
Guns stop guns. Not having guns invites guns to come in.
They care more about the support of the NRA than they do about children.
Former President Jimmy Carter delivering the commencement address at Liberty University in Virginia.
This is a wonderful crowd. It's even bigger, I hate to say this, than it was last year. I don't know if President Trump will admit that or not.
Prince Harry and American actress Meghan Markle setting their vows at St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle. Kentucky Derby winner Justify crossing the finish line first in a muddy Preakness. Of course, sets up a Triple Crown run at the Belmont.
We're never going out of style. I was thinking while the sun is sinking low, we could go all night.
You know what's never going out of style, Pete?
What?
The Royals.
What? Yes, they are.
Pete is really upset that it's all come to an end now. He couldn't sleep last night.
I pulled my phone up. I had to see who won the Celtics-Cavaliers game last night. That's what I really...
More important
Cavs were up big.
Cavs won, yeah. It's a series.
I actually have a unique take on this whole Royals thing. I think it was an elaborate plot by Pete to prevent a competition because we were kind of preempted a little bit.
Oh.
We usually do it on Saturdays. They could have done this wedding anytime. All of a sudden, it happens to be on a day we're going to have a competition. And he has the trophy. So it carries over another week.
What is the next competition, by the way?
It's not out there yet. We don't know. Well, Ed's already...
I know. I've been working on it.
This system has got
Stay tuned.
Been doing forever.
That is a tease. Well, good morning to all of you. Happy Sunday morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Well, if another day, another presidential tweet about whether or not there was surveillance on the Trump campaign. President Trump yesterday putting out this tweet, and it's setting the stage for a continuing showdown about investigating of the investigators. He tweeted this. He said, if the FBI or DOJ was infiltrating a campaign for the benefit of another campaign, that is a really big deal. Only the release or review of documents that the House Intelligence Committee, also Senate Judiciary, is asking for can give the conclusive answers, drain the swamp. Ed, this comes on the heels of a lot of pressure from the White House, from others to say, what does DOJ, FBI know, and why haven't they released all that?
Yeah, and remember, this really kicked into high gear when we had Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intel Committee, on this very program a few Sundays ago. And he was saying, we've issued a subpoena to Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department. We want this information about an intelligence source that had been helpful to the U.S. government, that may have been in contact with the Trump campaign, and they're trying to figure out, did that person basically infiltrate the campaign and basically was spying, surveilling the campaign? This is very interesting because the Justice Department has been pushing back and saying, we cannot reveal the identity of this person. We can't get into more information. Yet there's been leak after leak to the Washington Post and the New York Times, all but revealing who this person is. Well, who's doing the leaking? The FBI and Justice Department officials who are trying to spin their version.
Well, many of them are saying they've never leaked from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to get more and more reports that a lot of that is inaccurate. You do wonder how you can just put a spy on someone's campaign. Like, what evidence do you need to use in order to put a spy there? I guess they can put it in as an intelligence investigation versus a criminal investigation. If it's intelligence, then you can do whatever you want.
Well, if you think there's meddling,
no rules apply.
If you think there's influence from a foreign government, so the name is out there of this source. It's been reported. His name is Stephen Halper. He's an academic. He's been an intel source for our government for a long time. He was actually involved in a 1980s spying scandal involving Reagan officials and Jimmy Carter. I mean, this guy's been working with the CIA for a long time.
So we know who he is,
we know who he is
because of these stories.
Yes.
And yet the Democrats are coming out and saying, well, if Devin Nunes reveals his name, this could be illegal.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. But FBI, CIA, they call him an agent, call him a source, call him an informant, call him a spy, an asset. Take your pick. But it looked like they were trying to potentially entrap the Trump campaign to prove a theory. I mean, this guy, was he wearing a wire? Are there tapes? How far did the surveillance go on Carter Page, on Papadopoulos, on Sam Clovis? We don't know that. These are questions we have to get answers to your question. And what triggered it?
Yeah.
What was the justification?
Per usual, on one side, you've got the Republicans saying that if there was spying going on, what is the legality of that? As you said, the Democrats are now saying if you push for more information, if you're asking for the DOJ to release this info, that could also be illegal. Mark Warner tweeted out about that as well. Do we have Mark Warner's tweet that we can pull up? He says it would be at best irresponsible and at worst potentially illegal for members of Congress to use their positions to learn the identity of the FBI source for the purpose of undermining the ongoing investigation into Russian interference in our elections. So completely different sides on this. There's really no middle ground, as there ever is.
Right. And it is important, to be clear, to protect sources and methods. People who are giving information to the U.S. government. The question here is it Devin Nunes who's revealing the source, based on what Mark Warner is alleging? Or is it the fact that FBI and Justice Department officials have leaked to the New York Times and the Washington Post their version of events of what happened during the Trump campaign that has revealed this source, number one? And number two, go back to some of the former Obama officials like James Clapper, who was the director of national intelligence. And after Donald Trump, as the newly elected president in March of 2017, went on that tweet storm and said, I've just found out that my campaign was surveilled, that Trump Tower may have been wiretapped, all of that. James Clapper went on NBC's Meet the Press and claimed none of this happened. Watch.
There was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign. The focus here, and as it was with the intelligence community, is not on the campaign per se, but what the Russians were doing to try to instantiate themselves in the campaign or to influence or leverage it. So if there was someone that was observing that sort of thing, well, that's a good thing.
So last year, he's saying, wait a second, none of this happened. There was no surveillance of the Trump campaign. Now more facts come out because of pressure from Devin Nunes and others. And that same man, James Clapper, now a CNN analyst, is out there saying, well, if there was surveillance like this, that was a good thing, because we're trying to find out whether someone infiltrated, whether the Russians infiltrated. Are trying to cover their tracks.
This is also someone who referred to President Trump as an agent for the Russians. It used to be that people in these leadership roles, as head of national intelligence, the DOJ, the FBI, they used to be apolitical, right? They used to just nonpartisan do their job. And here we've seen time and time again across the board people that have left the jobs or have been fired from their job having very personal feelings and opinions about the current president. And you look back at things that have happened from the very beginning up until now, and still so many questions remain.
A ton of questions. We're also learning more details. That a lot of what we're learning from this intelligence source, Stephen Halper, or the interactions he tried to have with the Trump campaign, is that surveillance on Trump started earlier than James Comey ever admitted. James Comey said it was in late July. It actually started in early July. As we know, he paid for people to fly out. There was a Turkish woman that flirted with Papadopoulos to try to get more money. I mean, how far did they go to try to, some have used the word entrap or identify ways they could get intelligence or information, even without a crime being proven?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have just learned a small percentage of what's going to eventually come out.
That's right.
This IG report is going to be quite a bombshell when it ultimately comes
We're
out.
hearing maybe middle of this week.
Well, you've seen, we had the unfortunate
the shooting in Santa Fe
to cover that yesterday.
Yeah, it happened just a few days ago, and heartbreaking. And 10 people were killed, 10 were injured. And as we've seen all too often, these school shootings take place. But a little update on this. Obama's education secretary, former secretary, has an idea, because the country's now continuing to talk about ways that we can stop this from happening again. Well, they have an idea to boycott schools.
Yeah, this is Arnie Duncan.
Until the gun laws change. So this is the tweet, says, this is brilliant and tragically necessary. What if no children went to school until gun laws change to keep them safe? My family is all in if we can do this at scale. Parents, will you please join us?
So the idea is, if they don't get their way and take away guns or do something they deem as reasonable, which others might not see as reasonable, no kids go to school?
Yeah. Right. And for how long?
For how long?
Yeah.
Congress works at just breakneck speed usually. So I'm sure it would just be a matter of days that kids
Well,
would be
he's
out of
asking
school.
parents to follow suit. I'm not sure how that's going to go. I'm not sure how many parents are going to think that is the most brilliant idea.
So what do you think about the former education secretary's idea there? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. How do you weigh this against the Second Amendment rights that we have in this country? It's pretty remarkable.
We're going to have Bill Bennett, former education secretary, on the program as well. We'll ask him about that. Also, a ton of more details on our first topic to go over today, the DOJ and FBI.
There's a lot of news, and we've got a big show ahead. But speaking of that shooting, I want to bring you some other headlines we are following. We now know the names of all 10 victims of the Santa Fe high school shooting. They are substitute teachers Glenda Ann Perkins and Cynthia Tisdale. The students identified as Jared Black, Shanna Fisher, Christian Garcia, Aaron Kyle McLeod, Angelique Ramirez, Sabika Sheikh, Christopher Stone, and Kimberly Vaughn. The shooter's parents say they are, quote, shocked and confused, saying that reports of his actions seem incompatible with the boy that they loved. And an emotional scene as the school's basketball team took the field for a playoff game. The tears and hugs, just the beginning, as you can imagine, of that healing process. Among those in uniform, survivor Rome Schubert, who was shot in the back of the head and the neck, and he was one of the survivors of that shooting. Just so heartbreaking. And to see the names of those who lost their lives. All right, also this morning, a cougar attack leaves one man dead, another fighting for his life. Officials say two men, they were mountain biking just outside of Seattle when they encountered the wild animal. The injured man attacked first the cougar, then turning to his friend, killing him. The survivor is recovering in the hospital and luckily is expected to be okay. Agents able to use tracker dogs to find, shoot, and ultimately kill that cougar. Well, the First Lady is out of the hospital and back in the White House this morning. President Trump sharing the news on Twitter, writing this: great to have our incredible First Lady back home in the White House. Melania is feeling and doing really well. Thank you for all of your prayers and best wishes. Melania is home after spending nearly a week at Walter Reed Medical Center, where she had a procedure for an unspecified kidney condition said to be benign. And back to the royals. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will be returning to Kensington Palace this morning as husband and wife after millions of people tuned in to watch their fairy tale wedding yesterday. The kiss we were all waiting for. The newlyweds officially becoming the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, driving off in a Jaguar convertible. Of course, because why not? To their private reception. They are now putting their honeymoon on hold. Instead, they will be attending their first royal engagement as husband and wife Tuesday at Buckingham Palace for Prince Charles's 70th. He's turning 70.
Wow.
Birthday bash.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that Jaguar though, right? Why not drive out in a baby blue Jaguar in style?
Yeah, I did it right. You know, she's an American. We're proud of her.
Living all of our dreams. Good for you, Meghan.
Not my dream. Your dream. But it was good stuff. All right, well, remember that caravan of illegal immigrants threatening to cross the border? Well, there may be another one in the works. National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd here to explain, coming up soon.
And how old is too old to be living with your parents? I still live with my parents. One couple going to court to force their 30-year-old son to get a life, get a job, and move out. That story coming up.
Welcome back. Well, organizers of the migrant caravan that made its way to the United States a few weeks ago say they are planning another journey with a new caravan about this time next year.
But what point will their journey prove? And what kind of response can we expect from the U.S. Border Agency?
Here to weigh in, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd. Brandon, always good to have you on the show. Your perspective on this particular topic is always so helpful. Good to see you.
Thanks. I appreciate you being
so,
here.
What is your immediate reaction hearing that the organizers that have put together this caravan, it's been going on for about 10 years now, it was really only this year that people paid attention to it and the president making some moves? What do you make of them saying they're going to do the same thing a year from now?
Well, what they're trying to do is there's so many different factions that are against this president. And what they try to do is they try to bring negative attention on him. And this announcement coming at this time is no surprise. The president's popularity, his poll numbers are on the rise. And these groups, the last thing that they want to see is they want to see him win again in 2020. And so they're going to put out information trying to embarrass the president, trying to drop those poll numbers down and his popularity down. And that's all this is about. It's just about the negative attention that they're trying to draw on the president of the United States.
Brandon, are they counting on the fact that by this time next year, laws will still be the same? That, you know, that ultimately they will be able to get granted the kind of asylum or status that they'd want, that children will not be separated from parents? I mean, are they hoping that things don't change?
They are. If you look at it, the push that there is right now on Congress, the president did his job. In 2017, we saw historic drops, and he did that single-handedly with nobody else's help. But what he expected Congress to step in and take the necessary action that would have closed all of the loopholes that allow these people that seek asylum to get granted immunity into the court appearances. You know, it's interesting that Sim Frontera say that they bring these people up here to obey the laws, but yet when they get into the United States, they fail to obey the laws. They fail to show up to their court hearings. And the reason that they fail to show up to their court hearings is because they do not have a legitimate asylum claim. All they're doing is they're playing on the loopholes that the laws allow them to do right now.
Yeah. Brandon, what did you make this week of the media bias? I know you followed the story. The president had a roundtable with mayors from California talking about sanctuary cities. And at one moment, he was responding not about illegal immigrants, but about MS-13 gang members. The media didn't actually read the transcript and were criticizing him for that. For those that don't know, talk to us about MS-13. Are they animals, in your opinion?
They're worse than animals, in my opinion. Animals do not treat other animals the way MS-13 treats other human beings. And to see the president come out and give an actual explanation of what he was talking about, we saw tweets that were going out that were being taken down because they realized that they were caught red-handed for once again attacking this president for doing nothing wrong. In fact, for pointing out to the American public exactly what's happening with these very dangerous and violent gangs. Again, how many times do we have to sit back and allow women to get raped, children to get raped, women to get murdered, and every other thing that happens in MS-13 before we take a stand and say, enough's enough?
I mean, Brandon, MS-13's motto is kill, rape, control. If that's not the definition of animal behavior, I don't know what is. And ultimately, their hatred blinds them to the nuance that someone can have. An illegal immigrant is not an animal, but an MS-13 member certainly is if they're doing those types of things.
They are. Again, I believe, and my opinion is that MS-13, a lot of those individuals are worse than animals. Yeah. And to see the president double down on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's what Sarah Sanders said. She said animals doesn't even go far enough. I think a lot of people agree with that. Brandon Judd, great to have you on, as always. Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up on the show, Jimmy Kimmel putting the blame on Trump and the GOP after the Santa Fe shooting. Is this fair? We're going to debate that next.
Congresspeople or governors who don't ever do anything because they're fearful that will hurt them politically. They care more about the support of the NRA than they do about children.
It's time for the
morning. We are back with some quick headlines for you. The first volcano-related injury now being reported on Hawaii's Big Island. Officials there say a homeowner was sitting on a third-floor balcony when a lava burned him. This comes as fresh lava threatens to block a key highway serving as an escape route. Also more than 24 people have been hospitalized now after overdosing on synthetic marijuana known as K2. Authorities looking for the person who distributed it on a New York City intersection. All of those patients, though, luckily are expected to survive. Ed, take it away.
All right, thanks, Abby. Jimmy Kimmel not wasting any time before turning the tragedy at Santa Fe High School on Friday into a chance to get on his political soapbox yet again. Just hours after the shooting, Kimmel had this to say in his opening monologue.
Our leaders are sending their thoughts and prayers. President Trump said he is with the people of Santa Fe in this tragic hour and will be with them forever. Except for when it comes time to do something, then he will not be with them. Neither will any of the congresspeople or governors who don't ever do anything because they're fearful that will hurt them politically. They care more about the support of the NRA than they do about children.
Joining us with their reaction and a fair and balanced debate, Lawrence Jones, editor-in-chief of campusreform.org, and Antoine Seawright, a Democratic strategist. Good morning, both.
Good morning, Ed.
Antoine, I want to start with you. I seem to remember Jimmy Kimmel had his show during the Obama years, and I was at a news conference where my colleague Jake Tapper, then at ABC, now at CNN, said to Barack Obama, you keep talking about gun control, where you been? And he wasn't very happy about it. But the bottom line I'm asking you, Antoine, is what did Barack Obama do for 8 years about gun control if this is such a big Democratic priority?
Well, I remember very distinctively after the Connecticut shooting, this president, Barack Obama, with tears in his eyes, talked about how he felt it, and he felt like it was personal, and called for Congress to do something on this issue.
Right, but pardon me, there had been many tragedies before that. So yes, I was there, and he was very emotional about Newtown, and rightly so. But the point is, for example, he had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate at the beginning of his tenure. They didn't get anything done.
Well, the only thing I can tell you, my friend, is that he called for action and he led what leaders do. Here we are, another shooting in another scenario in which there be 10 families planning funerals that did not intend to be planning funerals in this manner. And the truth of the matter is, we've seen this before. I've been through it myself. I know what it's like to lose a friend in a mass shooting, as I did in Charleston, South Carolina, where my friend Clemente Pinckney, the pastor of that church, lost his life with 8 other people. And yet here we are almost 3 years later, and nothing has been done on this issue of gun reform at the federal level. So I think what Jimmy was doing was using his platform to say we have to do something and hold these people accountable who hold this leadership
Antoine,
role.
we're certainly sorry about your loss and your friend, but I want to get Lawrence in here as well.
Yeah, let me say something. I've never seen a better example of white privilege than Jimmy Kimmel. He's a rich white man that has security, but he doesn't want other Americans to have security as well, have the Second Amendment. Look, we've seen this happen where in communities where people look like me and Antoine, they have passed gun legislation, but it didn't work. So I'm going to tell you this. We've tried it your way. We've tried a deliberate way where they have gun control, and it did not help our communities. And so I'm not willing to disarm myself. One thing I will say is that I wish the left would be a little bit more honest. Can they just say they don't like the Second Amendment?
But Lawrence, this should not be about left versus right. This should not be about whether Democrats. Lawrence, this is not about whether Democrats want to take away your gun. Look, I love my gun. I'm a proud CWP holder, but the truth of the matter is we need to do everything we can to prevent these things from happening.
So what do you suggest we do? What do we do? Because there's no legislation that would have fixed this shooting.
We need reasonable gun reform measures to prevent another Charleston. To prevent another Parkland shooting, to prevent another Newtown. That's what we need. But we need a president and we need leaders who will lead on the issue.
Right, but the bottom line, though, is no gun law would have prevented this situation, and that's why Antoine couldn't name not one law to prevent
Of course I can. Like, for instance, people with mental health should never have gun issues. I mean, have guns in their hands. That's one prime example that I think you and I should agree with.
He stole his gun from his
I'm not speaking to just this issue, Lawrence.
Right.
I'm saying in general.
Antoine, Lawrence, we always enjoy having you on. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Terrorists organized violent and deadly riots along the Israeli border. The same day the U.S. opened its embassy in Jerusalem. So why did one high school hold a moment of silence for Hamas? Yes, Hamas. We'll get into it. And how old is too old to be living with your parents? Pete wants to know. No. One couple going to court to force their 30-year-old son to get a life, get a job, and move out.
Welcome back. Well, President Trump and South Korean President Moon speaking on the phone overnight.
Their conversation coming as Kim Jong-un makes new demands just days after threatening to call off the June 12th summit in Singapore.
Well, Garrett Tenney is live in Washington with the latest details. Good morning, Garrett.
Hey, good morning, y'all. The past couple weeks have shown us that June 12th summit with North Korea is still a long ways away. It was scheduled 3 weeks ago, and twice already, Kim Jong-un has threatened to cancel. This weekend, he added a new demand to his list for South Korea to return 12 women who defected from the North in 2016, calling it a goodwill gesture ahead of the peace talks. The South has said it would look into the issue, but previously indicated the women escaped by their own free will. This latest issue throws another wrench into the sensitive nuclear talks. Here's how President Trump responded earlier this week to Kim's threats of pulling out.
We are dealing with them now. We may have the meeting. We may not have the meeting. If we don't have it, that will be very interesting. We'll see what happens.
North Korea isn't the only one raising tensions in the region, though. This weekend, China's state media released video showing a long-range nuclear-capable bomber landing on an island in the disputed South China Sea for the first time. China's president previously pledged not to militarize the disputed area. Now, it's not clear what the U.S. response will be to this latest move, particularly given that China is expected to need to play a big role in the peace talks with. But that is one of the many issues President Trump and South Korea's president likely spoke about during their call yesterday ahead of their meetings here in Washington on Tuesday. Back to y'all.
All right. Thanks, Garrett.
It's a big deal. Follow that closely. Thank you, Garrett.
Absolutely. China flexing their muscles.
Trying to. Yeah, that's for sure. All right. Some other headlines I want to bring you this morning. Starbucks making a new policy official. Anyone can now sit in their cafes or use its restrooms, even if they don't buy anything. The changes come after the controversial arrest of 2 black men who had not bought anything at the store in Philadelphia last month, sparking nationwide outrage. Well, the company also plans to close thousands of stores on May 29th for racial bias training.
We're not a store, we're just a public hangout now.
And Liberty University's graduation ceremony getting political. HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson speaking to graduates, but it is former President Jimmy Carter's speech that is stealing headlines with this jab. Oh yes, at President Trump.
This is a wonderful crowd. It's even bigger, I hate to say this, than it was last year. I don't know if President Trump will admit that or not.
Kind of a joke, too. Well, President Carter referring to the Trump administration's claim over the size of the crowd at Trump's inauguration last year. Oh, these commencement speeches. And parents are outraged after a prestigious school holds a moment of silence. Listen to this. For Hamas. New York City's Beacon School pausing for after 60 people were killed in protests along the Gaza Strip. The Islamic militant group claims 50 of them were members. One man telling the New York Post, quote, "I did not send my child to a New York City public school to pray for Hamas operatives." The school has still not responded. I'd love Pete's thoughts on all that.
You know him. He's ready.
And Justify gallops through mud and fog right into the winner's circle at the Preakness Stakes. Watch.
Justify! He's unstoppable! He won the Preakness! Ravazo was second.
Unstoppable! The 3-year-old colt racing to victory on the sloppy track in Baltimore, similar to the conditions that we saw in the Kentucky Derby victory just 2 weeks ago. Well, Justify is now 1 win away from the coveted Triple Crown. He will have a chance to win that title at the Belmont Stakes. That is in June.
Wow.
It's looking good for him, though.
Runaway victory.
They're praying for rain for that third one.
Yeah.
It was almost like Pete in the kayak.
It was a runaway victory. Yeah. Got a little push too at the end.
All right. Well, there is this pretty incredible story that I think many people can relate to that's being reported. There is a family of parents that are trying to kick their son out of their house. He's a 30-year-old. They've gone to court. They've got a date set, I think, for May 22nd to actually hear this thing. They've sent their son, is it 6 notes, Pete?
Yeah, it's 5 written notices. So Christina and Mark Rotondo, they live in the Syracuse, New York area. They have a filing before the Supreme Court of the New York State to try to get their son, Michael, who's 30 years old, evicted from their house.
They're pleading with him. Their first note to their son, Michael, after a discussion with your mother, we have decided you must leave this house immediately. You have 14 days to vacate. You will not be allowed to return. We will take whatever actions are necessary to enforce this decision. Mark and Christina Rotondo. This is his parents, and they're signing it.
So properly. All right, this is another letter to the son to say, organize the things you need for work and to manage an apartment. Sell the other things you have that have any significant value. There are jobs available even for those with a poor work history like you. Get one. You have to work. If you want help finding a place, your mother has offered to help you.
So mom will still help you. Michael's defense is, you have to give me 6 months notice legally, and you cannot evict me as your child. I've lived here for 8 years with no chores and no expenses. I deserve to stay right here.
Who would want to leave that? You got a great place to live, good food.
What's he doing? Video games, maybe?
Of course.
You got the Xbox.
Sign of the times. I can stay in their health care till 26, so I'll add a few more years on top.
So have you had an incident like this at home? It's been hard trying to get the kids out, give them a little push. Friends at FoxNews.com.
And what age is too old? At what point should you leave the house?
And would you take it to the Supreme Court of your state if you had to get your kid out? Email us, friends at FoxNews.com. Adam, how about you?
I'm ready to move back in with my parents right now. Start doing my laundry, start cooking me food. It's a great deal. But now that my parents know legal recourse is an option, I don't know if they're going to let me back in.
Great point.
There's plans there now. Taking a look at a forecast across the country. Actually, a really busy night in the heartland, right in the center of the country. We saw some severe weather firing off. Anything in the red, that would be a tornado-warned storm. Everything you're looking at in the blue, those are wind reports, and everything in the green, that's hail. So big storms continuing to move across the country at this hour. It's going to linger until the early morning hours here this morning as we're seeing this line of storms firing up, moving through portions of Texas and Oklahoma, now running up into areas of Missouri, still seeing rounds of rain across the East Coast as well. This is happening anytime you see warm air and cold air bumping against each other. Here's your current temperatures. There's the warm air. There's the cold air. We're going to continue to see some of this firing off throughout the rest of the day, guys.
All right.
Just beautiful out there, Adam.
Yep.
Thank you.
Always good news for you.
Always. That's sarcasm. This professor now reportedly identified as the FBI's mole inside the Trump campaign, as President Trump calls on the DOJ to release their spying documents. Tom Fitton says everything needs to be declassified right now. He joins us next.
Plus, David Bossie, Bill Bennett, Sarah Carter, and Maria Bartiromo all here live this morning. That's just a few.
Yeah.
We've got a ton
We're
of
just
guests
getting
coming
started.
up. Yeah. Wake up. Come join us.
Morning again. Some quick headlines. In a potential trade breakthrough, China has agreed to buy more U.S. goods. Following 3 days of high-level talks in Washington, the two countries now taking measures to, quote-unquote, substantially reduce America's trade deficit with China, though they did not meet the targets the White House wanted. The White House, meanwhile, says this will support growth and employment in the United States. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo expected to announce a new comprehensive strategy for Iran tomorrow. He will address how the international community can scale back Tehran's nuclear and conventional weapons capabilities. This comes nearly 2 weeks after the president pulled out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Pete?
I'm still waiting to meet this international community, Ed. All right, well, the president putting pressure on the DOJ to release documents about the FBI source in his campaign amid spying claims. Tweeting this: if the FBI or DOJ was infiltrating a campaign for the benefit of another campaign, that's a really big deal. Only the release or review of documents that the House Intelligence Committee, also Senate Judiciary, is asking for can give the conclusive answers. Drain the swamp. This as multiple outlets now report that the FBI informant in the Trump campaign was American-born Cambridge professor Stephen Halper, that man right there, who reportedly first met with Trump campaign advisors intentionally to get information in early July of 2016. Joining us now to weigh in on these developments is Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, a conservative watchdog group. Tom, thanks for being here this morning. So the DOJ is angry about potentially outing of sources, while someone over there at DOJ seems to be deliberately outing sources and leaking them to the media. How do we get the truth here?
Well, as the president says, we need to release the information. Look, the media had put two and two together long ago. Back in March, the Daily Caller noted that Professor Halper had approached Papadopoulos and others. And then more information was being leaked by the Justice Department and the FBI to try to spin this person's involvement in the campaign, and which just confirmed for anyone with Google who that was indeed Mr. Halper. So the idea that they were concerned about lives lost and such is bunk, and it shows they can't be trusted to honestly evaluate whether or not to release information in the public interest, and the president needs to step in directly, declassify everything he possibly can related to the illicit effort to spy on his campaign by the Obama administration. And if it means getting in the way of the Mueller investigation, so be it, because we have to remember the Mueller investigation is a continuation of the spy effort that began in 2016.
Sure.
The results were handed over. The investigation entirely was handed over by Rosenstein to Mr. Mueller when he appointed him.
It's all part of a long continuum, no doubt about it.
That's right.
As DOJ realizes this information is going to get out, they've run to the media and leaked important details. Look at these headlines. The Washington Post saying the secret intelligence source who aided Mueller probe is at center of latest clash between Nunes and Justice Department. Details about him were leaked there. Then in the New York Times, codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, the secret origins of the Trump investigation. Again, more information about this potential source. Then the Washington Post, bigger than Watergate, Trump joins push by allies to expose role of an FBI source. So someone's out there leaking information about this potential individual. And then DOJ puts out this statement around the same time. They say, we treat disclosures of classified information seriously, and we prosecute those responsible, regardless of whether the person is within the intelligence community or a staff on the Hill. Are these real concerns, fake concerns? Are they spinning? What is happening in DOJ as it pertains to protecting sources? Are they really doing that, or are they trying to cover up for themselves?
Oh, this is just deep state. This is deep state spin. The Justice Department again is the dog being wagged by the Mueller special counsel tail, and everything is designed to protect the Mueller operation, and the Mueller operation is imploding as a result of revelations about how it started with this illicit spying. The idea that they would send this man, Stephen Halper, try to insert him into the campaign, induce meetings with campaign operatives with payments for supposed work. This was inevitable. This was going to come out. And it's the FBI's responsibility, the CIA's responsibility, if they were involved, for this outrageous activity. And Peter, I'd like to compare and contrast the headlines and the spin that the Washington Post and New York Times are happily providing the deep state with what they reported on with Nixon's plumbers and such. And this makes Nixon plumbers seem like an amateur operation.
Well, absolutely. And do we know? There's no way we know how far it went, how much Halper was paid. Did he wear a wire? Are there recordings? Ultimately, what triggered them sending him there? Was it the CIA? Was it the FBI? Was it the DOJ? I mean, there's so many questions left unanswered. Without declassification, we know who this guy is. You don't want to disrupt sources and methods. But if the sources and methods were to politically spy on another campaign, American people deserve to know about that.
And the emphasis is on plural, sources and methods. National security letters, they were taking up phone records. They had wiretaps. We don't know, through the FISA surveillance of Carter Page, we don't know if there were other FISA warrants. This is why there's got to be a thorough airing of this misconduct, the spying by the Obama administration on Donald Trump while they were protecting Hillary Clinton on obvious crimes.
And the things we were told aren't true. I mean, James Clapper said we weren't doing any of this. Now he's saying it was a good idea to do so. James Comey said, well, we didn't start surveilling until late July. Now we're learning they started surveilling in early July. So if your officials aren't telling you the truth, then you've got to push hard to do it, and members of Congress are at least trying to. Do you think we'll get this stuff declassified, Tom, briefly?
I think we will. I didn't think it'd get worse than the Clinton DNC dossier, but it is. You see, they have a lot to hide.
They sure do. Tom Fitton, thanks for helping expose a lot of the things they're trying to keep hidden. All right, well, moving on. Remember the Oakland mayor who warned illegal immigrant criminals of an upcoming ICE raid? Well, President Trump said she broke the law.
You look into obstruction of justice for the mayor of Oakland, California, Jeff. She advises 1,000 people. They told, get out of here, the law enforcement's coming.
This morning, the mayor is responding, and we'll bring that to you. Plus, kids bringing pot to school. One state's about to make that legal. Sounds like a great idea. Welcome back. Well, everyone's favorite anti-hero is back and already breaking records during its first day in theaters.
Deadpool 2, starring Ryan Reynolds, is expected to take the #1 box office crown this very weekend.
Let's step into the Fox Light
Finally.
with Senior VP Marketing Michael Tamaro. You say you love it.
Love it. Almost better than the first.
And that's rare.
The best sequel since The Godfather Part 2. And I recently caught up with the cast, and here's a sneak peek, and you'll see why.
There's this kid. He's in trouble. Move or die.
Pump the hate brakes, Thanos.
I think you got a hit on your hands. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
How would you describe this crazy, wild movie to people who aren't that familiar with it?
If you're not familiar with Deadpool, have you been under a rock?
Deadpool 2 is like Sugar Ray's Every Morning, but with slightly more Mark McGrath.
It's like this great breath of fresh air in the midst of all these huge tentpole movies and all that. It's just like all the things you're not supposed to do in a film.
But it's also like a really heartfelt story about a guy really just trying to do right by this kid.
We're gonna form a super duper crew. We need them tough, morally flexible, and young enough to carry their own franchise for 10 to 12 years.
It's time to get back on LinkedIn.
Given the success of the first film, what are your expectations for Deadpool 2?
This one was definitely a money grab. Big time. The good news is you don't need to see Deadpool 1 to understand Deadpool 2, but definitely see Spider-Man 3 to enjoy it.
Bring it on, One-Eyed Willie.
Ooh! Yeah! Your bullets. They're really fast. Really bad, but the movie is really good. All the irreverent humor from the original, plus a little bit more, including a couple of jokes about a certain morning show. You're going to have to see it to know what it is, but it's poised to pull in about $133 million this weekend at the box office. It's the biggest release for an R-rated movie and the biggest release for a 20th Century Fox
So they're
movie.
taking him at the Today Show?
Yes.
Ryan
How'd you guess that, Henry?
Ryan Reynolds was meant to play this role, though. Of all the movies I've seen him in, this is him.
And these two movies have been a big passion project of his, and he's put all of his self into these movies, and it shows. They're not sure if there's going to be a third one. So we'll have to see.
Well, this one seems to be doing pretty well already.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see this one. I didn't even see the first one. I need to watch them both.
You need to see them both.
All right, you've convinced me.
Samira, good to see you this
Good
morning.
to see you guys.
Meanwhile, the mainstream media is slamming President Trump for calling MS-13 animals.
Immigrant communities hear this as a dog whistle.
No one would condemn Donald Trump calling people animals more than Jesus Christ would.
Well, this morning, a Democrat from California defends the media and says the president was probably calling you an animal, too.
Plus, David Bossie, Bill Bennett, Sarah Carter, Maria Bartiromo, just a few of the people that are going to join us. We've got a big 3 hours still to go on this Fox and Friends on Sunday morning. We'll be back after this.